Welcome to Everything You Need to Know About the Ascension of Humanity, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science and spiritual evolution gets real. I'm Heather, an energy healer, channel, and spiritual coach with Divine Ascension Company. Each week, we're diving deep into the mysteries of human consciousness, spiritual awakening, and the profound transformation happening within us and around us. But here's the thing. We're not doing this with our heads in the clouds. We're bringing neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and cutting-edge research to the table alongside meditation, energy work, and timeless spiritual teachings. Because the truth is, the ascension of humanity isn't some far-off cosmic event. It's happening right now in the choices we make, the awareness we cultivate, and the healing we do within ourselves. Whether you're curious about how mindfulness literally rewires your brain, why shadow work is backed by depth psychology, or what coherence between your heart and mind actually means scientifically, you're in the right place. We'll explore practices like breathwork, meditation, and emotional alchemy, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible tools grounded in both spiritual wisdom and scientific understanding. And here's where it gets even better. In our bonus episodes, you'll hear from real people sharing real stories. These are the warriors, the healers, the everyday seekers who've walked through their own darkness and found their light. They'll share their breakthroughs, their struggles, and the resources that actually help them along the way. Because personal growth isn't a solo journey, and you deserve to know you're not alone. So whether you're just beginning to question the nature of reality, or you're deep in your spiritual practice, this podcast is your companion on the path. It's time to expand, to awaken, and to rise together. Let's begin. What do you do when grief shatters your carefully planned life? April had it all mapped out: college, teaching degree, marriage, kids. But when her 21-year-old cousin Greg died in a house fire, everything changed. So she did something drastic. She decided to hike the Appalachian Trail with zero experience. After failing the first attempt at 400 miles, she came back for another try. And on a rain-soaked September day in the White Mountains, hiking alone in 40-degree weather through conditions that could have killed her, April heard voices. Her cousin Greg, the track athlete who died too young, telling her, go. Her grandmother, who had just passed away and hated being outdoors, saying, you'll be okay, just take it slow, one step at a time. This is the story of how 2,190 miles on the Appalachian Trail became a spiritual journey, how talking to the dead brought comfort in the wilderness, and how one step at a time, quite literally, can save your life and transform everything. If you've ever wondered whether our loved ones guide us from the beyond, this conversation will give you chills. Let's dive in. April, how are you doing today? Are you there? I can't hear you.
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited for you to be here. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story?
Oh boy, it's kind of a varied story. So this, I kind of have a question.
Okay.
So when you say, tell me about my story, am I talking specifically about this Appalachian Trail story, or is it just about me in general? And I'm assuming it's going to be edited.
Yeah, I'll edit it. Yeah. So you can start with who you are and then talk about your story. Like I said, it's up to you. Whatever you want to share. This is your spotlight.
Okay. All right. So I'm April. Right now I'm a speaker, a keynote speaker, and I recently sold a business after 26 years. And I ended up using a lot of experiences from when I hiked the Appalachian Trail in order to motivate my staff. Lots of stories about just getting through things, making the best of things, working hard, and taking one step at a time. And that's how I kind of motivated my staff. And that led me into being a keynote speaker, motivating other people.
That sounds awesome. So you said about your Appalachian Trail story. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I grew up playing in the woods behind my house, and I had a set plan for my life. I was going to graduate from high school, go to college, get a teaching degree, get a teaching job, meet somebody, get married, have kids, and that was the whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then after college, my college boyfriend and I broke up, and the dating scene was not fun. And so my plan of getting married seemed to be on hold, and I couldn't find a teaching job because there were too many teachers and nobody had retired. So I was substitute teaching. So I was working all the time, substitute teaching during the day, working in the malls at night, going out on weekends. And it was the same story every single weekend. And then in August of 1995, my cousin Greg was 21 years old, and he died in a house fire.
Wow.
And it was really the first bad thing that had ever really happened in our family. And Greg was more than a cousin. He was more like a brother. And it just made me realize I needed to do something very, very drastic and very different. And so I'm not even sure how I learned about the Appalachian Trail. I think I read about it in a book, and then I just got interested in what is the Appalachian Trail. I'd been on a few day hikes with some coworkers, and I just decided I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail. Like, out of the blue, I had no hiking experience, had never backpacked a day in my life. And I said, I'm just going to go do something different and outrageous. And I
That's
said,
isn't that a difficult trail?
it is a difficult trail. Only about 20% of the people who attempt a thru hike actually finish.
Wow.
I don't know why I thought I was going to be one of those 20%. With zero experience.
How much of it did you actually get done?
So I left in April of 1996, and I got injured right away because I didn't prepare. I didn't have the right equipment. And I got about 400 miles before I came home limping and vowing someday to go back and do it again. But I was just broken.
How long is the trail actually? Because 400 miles seems like a lot to me.
400 miles is a lot. It's 2,190.6 miles at this point.
Okay. Wow. That is a lot. Okay.
Yeah. So 400 miles out of 2,000 isn't much.
But it's commendable because it's certainly a lot more than I would be able to do, I think.
Well, it did teach me a whole lot. I got to think about my cousin Greg a lot. I used to talk to him on the trail. I didn't really get any answers, but this was 1996, so nobody had cell phones with them. A few people carried heavy Walkmans and would leave cassette tapes in the shelters for other people when they were done with them.
Okay.
But there was essentially no music unless you had a Walkman. So you were out there talking to yourself and listening to the woods, and that was it. For 8 to 10 hours a day.
Wow. It's quite different than now, I would imagine.
It is very different now. But I came home, and I just kind of got back into the same routine. Substitute teaching, working back at the mall, going out with the same people on the same Friday and Saturday nights to the same dance clubs. And that 2 months of hiking did absolutely nothing because I wound up right exactly where I started. Did I just lose you again?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to do another up and random thing. My sister's best friend had moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is about 1,000 miles away, and she needed a roommate. So in about 5 minutes, I decided, okay, I'm not going to hike the Appalachian Trail again, but I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I did that, and I loved it, and I met a whole bunch of people, and I did get a teaching job, and it was the worst teaching job ever. And I somehow managed to make it through the end of the semester, and I got my dream job in August of 97. Working in 4th grade elementary school. I thought this is where I was going to be forever. My best friend who lived in Charlotte was teaching at the same school, and I thought, that's it. I'm finally on my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated the principal. He and I did not get along. We didn't see eye to eye about anything. And I ended up putting in my notice at Christmas time.
Wow.
And decided, okay, this is the time. I got a temp job to save some money. And in March of 98, I went to hike the Appalachian Trail again. I started over by myself, got some different equipment. I learned from my mistakes. I did some exercising beforehand. I hit the trails and got into trail shape and was dropped off at the end of March and said, here you go. I'm on my own. And up I went on the Appalachian Trail again. And this trail, this hike was transformative. I didn't know if I was going to make it to the end. I mean, 2,000 miles is a long time. So a lot of trail and a lot of things can happen. And as much as you have good intentions, you never know what could happen. And of course, I started with the injuries almost right away. Again, I pulled muscles. I had shin splints for a long time. I think I pulled my quad muscle. Yeah, I had proper boots this time, so my feet didn't hurt like they did on my first hike. But still, I was just limping all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's my own fault. I like to be in the woods and I like to look at the trees and the birds and the pretty clouds in the sky and the amazing views. And I don't really look down at my feet. So, I step in holes and I trip over tree roots and sometimes trip on a rock. It's just me. I really need to pay attention to my feet more, but
I get it. I'm the same.
You think I would learn, but I don't know. It's just being out on the trail and in nature, totally surrounded by it 24/7.
It's so hard. It's such a beautiful view, right? There's so much going on.
There's a lot going on. Sometimes there's beautiful views. Sometimes you can't see a thing. The Appalachian Trail is also known as the Green Tunnel. So it's not like the Pacific Crest Trail where you see vistas all day long. On the Appalachian Trail, you're undercover from the canopy of trees. So it's like you're literally walking through the woods until you get to the top of the mountain. And then you have a pretty view. And you sit there for 20 minutes and say, oh, that's pretty, but I have more miles to make. And so you get up and go. So you do a lot of talking to yourself, a lot of just being out in nature, just talking to yourself, and maybe you get an answer. I did do a lot of talking to my cousin Greg. I've never been a particularly religious person. But with him, I feel like I could talk to him when I was out there. I felt a little closer to him. I can't really explain it. I'm not sure if there's a spirituality of being on the Appalachian Trail itself and just being out in nature.
Mm.
So I would do a lot of talking to myself, talking to Greg. I had no idea really what I was looking for out there. And that was part of what I would do my talking to him about is why am I here? You know, I thought I was supposed to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher. Now what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I'm 28 years old. I'm still single. Why am I out here? You know, just why am I out here every day? I had no idea why I was out there. And a lot of people don't know why they're out on the trail. You would think that people would have a clue as to why they would quit their jobs and go walk a trail for 6 months, but a lot of people don't know the actual answers to that.
It's amazing the universe works like that. And just even being in nature like that because it's so grounding and the trees are so healing. And like when you're looking for answers like that, the mother nature, the universe, whatever, tends to respond. Just, I mean, not always in the way you think, but it sounds like you had a good experience. So did you get any answers?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you get any answers?
I did eventually. So somewhere about, I was in Tennessee and I was taking a couple of days off and my grandmother passed away. And I was pretty close to my grandmother growing up. So I said, I cannot miss the funeral. So I was staying at a hostel and they brought me to this little tiny airport where you actually walked out on the tarmac to get onto your plane. Now, this was pre 9/11, so maybe things have changed there, but it's the tiniest airport I'd ever seen. And I got on a plane and I flew home, and I was home for 2 weeks to say goodbye to my grandmother, attend to her funeral. And I got back on the trail on May 14th, which was the day after my birthday. And then once I started hiking, not only would I talk to Greg, but somehow I would always talk to my grandmother. Which was kind of funny because my grandmother didn't like being outside. She grew up in northern Maine, so I think she was just tired of it. She didn't like bugs. She was tired. I think she did all that in her youth. And when she got to be an adult, she's like, no. I have a house. I'm going to be in the house. No more bugs. No more cold weather. But for some reason, whenever I would walk, I would talk to those two. And it wasn't really until New Hampshire that I heard them talk back. So I started my hike on March 29th. And the first week of September, I think it was September 9th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in there, I was in the White Mountain National Forest for the first time. I was above tree line, and this was the hard part of the hike. People say by the time you get to New Hampshire, you've hiked 80% of the miles, but you've only done 20% of the work. And so I started hitting these white mountains, which were just rock scrambles above tree line, straight up, straight down the other side, just rocks, climbing rocks for hours and hours and hours.
Wow.
And I woke up at the Beaver Brook Lean-To, which is just off the summit of Mount Moosilauke. It's the first, it's like 4,800 feet in elevation. It's the first mountain that northbounders get to that's above tree line. And I remember we got to the top of the mountain. I was hiking, a whole bunch of hikers were around me at the same time. And usually when you get to the top of a mountain, you kind of celebrate and, you know, you look at the views. But we were up there and it was like 35, 40 degrees and it was raining and misty and cloudy. It was just awful weather. And so we didn't stay up there. We got to the shelter as soon as possible and it rained all night long. And when we woke up in the morning, it was still raining. So I had made a plan to hike 15 miles that day. Now, 15 miles it sounds like a lot, but when you're used to hiking I mean, my biggest day was 26 miles. So when you're used to hiking 20 miles a day and your body is in trail shape, you've been on the trail for 4 months, 5 months, you're in shape. So 15 miles doesn't seem like all that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a plan to get to Lonesome Lake Hut. The White Mountains have a hut system. They're like kind of hotels out in the middle of the wilderness. They're basic. You know, you've got a basic room or a bunk room. They've got a common lounge, and then the lounge is where you eat dinner. And they have employees that live and work there, and they cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so you can just hike from hut to hut. So the nice thing about a hut is you get a room with a bed, an actual bed, and a mattress and blankets, and it's warm. Mm-hmm. So since we had just spent, the last couple of hours in the rain, and it was still raining in the morning, I was like, I'm going to hike 15 miles to Lonesome Lake Hut. That was my plan. So when I left that morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, it follows Beaver Brook all the way down the mountain, which is usually a nice, pretty little stream. And this was not a pretty little stream. Since it had rained all night, it was like a waterfall. It was a half-mile long waterfall. Wow. And I had to get down that. And I remember thinking that I was going to fall. The rocks were slippery. I remember I stepped into what I thought was a little mud puddle, maybe an inch or two deep, and my whole foot went in halfway up to my knee. I ended up pulling it out. My boots are covered in mud. My pants are muddy. I mean, it was just awful. And it was still raining. It was a good steady rain all day long, and it was about 40 degrees. So I remember stopping for a minute and realized I had only gone 2 miles, and it had taken about an hour and a half.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, you better pick up the pace. If you want to get to Lonesome Lake Hut, you better move. I did not realize this section of the trail was that difficult. It really wasn't flat at all. It was either up or it was down. You were hiking uphill or you were hiking downhill. And because it was raining, there was really nowhere to stop to get lunch. I remember taking my backpack off and thrusting my hand into the backpack just to pull out a bagel. And I would eat a dry bagel as I was walking because, I couldn't make tuna fish, or I couldn't put something on the bagel. It was just raining too hard and it was so cold I had to keep moving. Mm-hmm. So I hiked like that for about 6-7 hours. And at 3:40 p.m., I get to Eliza Brook Shelter. And I was thinking, okay, it's getting towards later in the day. I should probably just stay at the shelter and forget the hut. And when I got to the shelter, there's tents set up everywhere. There's about a dozen tents, and the shelter is full of people. There's not room for anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody's ever set up a tent in the rain.
It's not fun.
It's not fun. And it's almost impossible to stay dry. And I was just miserable. So I couldn't even cook anything to eat because the shelter was full and I had nowhere. I was kind of like sitting on the very edge of the shelter with the roof overhang over me. So I was dry, or at least I wasn't getting rained on, but I was still wet, and I just did not want to set up my tent. And I knew it would be a miserable night. And I just said, well, I'm going to go hike to the hut. And all the people in the shelter, they're like, you should not go to the hut. It's too far. It's going to be dark soon. It's crazy. And all I had was, I have to get to the hut. I have to get to the hut. And so I left at like 4:10. Now, this is early September in northern New Hampshire. So the sun's going to set within about 2 hours. And I just hiked. And this is the part that really kind of affected my hike, because I don't really remember how miserable I must have been. I mean, I had to cross Eliza Brook, which is normally a little trickle of a stream, and it was rushing water up to my knees, and I couldn't even see the rocks because the water was just rushing so fast. So what should have taken 30 seconds to cross took me about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have been my first clue of don't go on. But I pictured a warm, comfortable bed. That's all I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started up Kinsman Mountain, and it's a really good thing I didn't read the guidebook ahead of time. Kinsman Mountain it's a rock scramble. The entire trail is a rock scramble.
Wow.
And I was on it in a steady downpour in like 40 degrees, and I just had to keep moving, otherwise hypothermia would set in. So I just remember climbing this mountain, and my brain tells me I should have been the most uncomfortable, cold, miserable person. And I don't remember any of that, because I remember talking to my cousin Greg and my grandmother, and I heard them say, "It's okay. You'll be okay. Just take it one step at a time. You'll be okay. Take it slow. You'll be okay." And that's all I heard the entire time was, "You'll be okay." And I mean, we're talking an elevation of like 3,000 feet in 2 miles or something. It's a really steep trail.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was hiking slowly and, planting my foot firmly before I took the next step, because I really didn't want to fall. And I remember I had read somewhere that there was or I saw a sign there was a campsite coming up or something. And by this time it was pretty much dark. It was 7:15. Well, I didn't know what time it was. And I said, if it's after 7:15, if it's 7:15 or later, I need to stop hiking and I need to stay at this campsite and I need to set up my tent, which really irritated me, because if I had wanted to set up my tent, I would have stayed at the darn shelter.
Right.
So I finally get to the intersection with this stupid campsite, and I said, all right, if it's 7:15 or later, I got to stay. And I looked at my watch, and it was 7:13 and 45 seconds.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, stay or go. Stay or go. I mean, I really had no idea what to do. And then I heard go. And I don't know if that was my cousin Greg. He was a track athlete. And I said, okay. So I took off down the trail, and I said, I still have 2 miles to make it to the hut. And again, if I had read the guidebook, I would not have done this in the dark, in the rain, because how I made it out alive is just beyond me, because it's straight down the mountain. It's all rocks. It's almost like descending into a cave, because the trail itself is so narrow and you're just going downhill and downhill. And the only light I had was my dull headlamp. This was before they had halogen, so it wasn't very bright. And I just kept hearing my grandmother say, "You'll be okay. Just take it slow, one step at a time." And I had never really heard her voice before. I mean, I felt like I understood what she was saying, but that was the first time I'd actually heard her voice of, "You'll be okay. Just take it slow." And then I heard my cousin Greg, "Go on, keep going. You'll make it. You'll get there." And it took a couple of hours, 2.5 hours it took to hike those 2 miles down that mountain. And I did get to Lonesome Lake Hut. somewhere at 9:15, 9:45. I don't remember. I remember it was before 10. And I'd never been so happy to see a hut in the middle of the mountains before.
Yeah.
It was like the light on the door, right outside the door, was like a beacon, just calling me through the woods. But I just remember saying, Grandma, get me there safe. Greg, get me there safe. And they're like, we'll get you there. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And so when I got to the hut, most of the hikers were sleeping, but there was one, Victory Gallop was awake. And he was like, this is really late for people to be hiking in the White Mountains in the rain. I mean, it's still raining. And he's like, how did you get here? And I was like, I don't know. I my cousin and my grandmother, they were helping me the whole way. And so we had a nice chat about spirituality out on the trail, and how sometimes you just have to listen. And, it's maybe not what you want to hear. And it is kind of freaky to hear your dead cousin's voice in your brain. But I guess it was what I needed at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, sounds like you needed it. And it's interesting too, because you say that you don't remember how miserable you probably were. And I know, like, from a psychology standpoint, like, when you're in a serious survival, flight or flight moment, your brain disassociates and it affects your memory. But also on the spiritual side of that, like when you have your guides and your deceased loved ones, they're helping you, like they have the ability to help with that pain and that discomfort and everything as well. So it's interesting that you remember not remembering, because there's so many things that could be the cause of that on both sides, scientifically and spiritually. But the fact that you actually got to hear their voices after speaking to them for so long without hearing anything is also pretty amazing.
I actually didn't even remember how hard it was raining. And, years later, I talked to Victory Gallop. He was my friend at the hut. And I remember it being cold and misty, rainy. And he says, no, it was a downpour all day long. And then I looked back in my notes, in my journals that I wrote, and it really was a hard downpour all day long. And I don't remember that. So I really do think my grandmother and my cousin were just making me think I was in a better situation than I really was. I mean, it was a bad situation, and I can't believe I didn't recognize that. But I don't really feel like I had any control over it either. I don't think it was a conscious decision. I'm going to get to this hut. It was, I have to get to the hut, and I'm going to make it. And I have people guiding me, and I'll be okay.
Plus, I'm sure the fact that you didn't realize how bad it was raining and stuff was probably helpful for not giving up, right? Like,
Right.
even if they helped you to block that out, right? I mean, I would assume that it would be because they wouldn't want you to give up. So not realizing how hard it's raining makes it a little easier to push on and keep motivated, rather than just getting overwhelmed by that downpour, especially with the way you describe walking through a stream that's now a waterfall, and 30 seconds going into 5 minutes now for this little piece of your journey. I can only imagine how hard it was raining and for how long, if it was that much. Like, it's amazing.
It was sunny the next day. I remember that.
Yeah, after you got there, right?
After I got there, I remember sleeping in my sleeping bag with a wool blanket over me, and I was toasty warm. And I remember waking up and the sun was shining. And that I do remember distinctly. But yeah, I guess it was pretty miserable. A lot of people actually got off the trail that night. They were near, I don't remember the name of the town, near Lincoln, New Hampshire. But a lot of people actually got off the mountain and went into town that day because it was so miserable. They're like, what's the point of hiking in this? And a lot of them just went into town and stayed at a hostel all day long.
Slackers.
Smart ones. But I think I have a better story.
I would agree, but I'm glad that you made it safely and that you had your family members there to help you, because it sounds terrifying. It sounds absolutely terrifying.
I imagine it could be. I just didn't feel any of that fear. It was just get to the hut, get to the hut, get to the hut for like 12 hours. Get to the hut.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was just led that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the funny thing is, that was really the beginning of the friendship that Victory Gallup and I had.
Mm-hmm.
I had only met him a couple days before that, and he hikes a lot faster than I did. So I didn't know him at all. But that was really the beginning of the friendship. And then I saw him almost every day. And then we summited Katahdin together. I mean,
Wow.
his fiance came and he hiked with her. But anyway, we summited the same day. And we're still friends to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only did you get a good story, but you got a good friend. That sounds great.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. So, you turned this story into a book, right?
I did. This little story just of hiking to Lonesome Lake Hut, I turned into a chapter in an anthology, and that chapter turned into a book. So I wrote Trail Gimp, which was my trail name. Most people go by trail names and not real names. Mm-hmm. And there were so many lessons I'd learned out on the trail that I just wanted to share. Why people quit their jobs and go hike for 6 months, what people learn from being on the trail for 6 months, and more importantly, what do you learn and how do you apply that to the rest of your life? Mm-hmm. So for me specifically, spirituality became a big part of it. That was really the first time I had really heard dead relatives. I hate to use that term, but relatives that have passed on, it's really the first time I heard their voice. And so it just made me become aware of it. And so I'm not a big church goer, but I do feel like I have a lot more spirituality. And I just bring that into my everyday life.
That's amazing.
I don't get upset about things because I've learned that, having big temper tantrums it doesn't solve the problem. It uses a whole bunch of energy, but it doesn't solve the problem. You're still left with the problem when you're done having your temper tantrum.
And
so,
probably too.
Yeah. And, I don't really rush through things anymore. I take things as slow as necessary. And I mean, I'm not perfect, I'm not saying I'm living the most Zen life. But I do. Yeah, if I'm not supposed to be somewhere, I know I'm not supposed to be somewhere, and I'm okay with that. So I figure it'll happen in its own time, and I'm where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there.
That's amazing. That's a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn. So kudos to you, because that's absolutely true. Between divine timing and, living an aligned life and listening, right?
Right.
To your guides, your deceased loved ones, your body, whatever it is, really helps put that into perspective. So that's amazing.
It does. And one of the things I learned, whenever I'm confronting a tough situation or a choice I have to make that I really don't want to make, or, there's always a lesson from the trail that comes out at that time. Sometimes it's just take one step, and, or if you make a wrong decision, it's okay. You can usually reverse course. And so you make a wrong decision. It's no big deal. Then you just choose the right decision the next time, or you figure out what to do. I, I don't know. I don't worry about things anymore. I never really have. I don't get upset. And my husband doesn't understand that. He's like, why are you never upset? And
like the trail?
right. I met him after I hiked. So, as much as I can try to explain it to him, he'll never understand. So I'm just like, things will happen as they happen, and I just need to accept it. And some things you just can't force, and you can't hike 2,000 miles in a month. And so all good things in time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of how I approach things from now on.
For sure. And that's awesome. And I joke about asking him to hike the trail because we all have our own like trail things, right? And that those moments in our life, like some people it's a music festival or hiking or, traveling to a different country or something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be hiking a trail, but it is possible to have those like total life-changing moments, these
Right.
amazing experiences. And I'm super excited that you got to have that.
Thanks. Yeah, he does not hike. He tried it once for a weekend. He sprained his ankle within the first 12 hours. He never went back out again. He likes to be outside. He likes to hunt and things like that. But as far as hiking, that's way too much work for him. So he'll never do that. So I'm just starting to get back into it. After I hiked, I started a business, and we started raising kids, and I just got busy, and I never hiked again. Not even on a day hike. And I just went out about a month ago just for a day, and I forgot how much I loved it. And I was like, yeah, I have to get back out there.
Good for you.
So have to get back out there.
Good for you. Yeah, it's amazing to after so long to get to do it again and instantly. It's like riding a bike, like, but not just the physical aspect of it, but also jumping back into that mindset and like that, just the wondrousness and the beauty of being out there and, experiencing something that you enjoy, that you are passionate about, that just really does something for you, right?
Right. And there's something special about being on the Appalachian Trail itself. So, I mean, I've been out I live near the Adirondacks, so I've been in the Adirondacks lots of times. But there's something about the Appalachian Trail specifically that just calls my heart. And I just see a white blaze and I melt. And I have to go hug the white blaze. I have to go hug the tree.
Nice.
And I'm not usually a tree hugger, but when there's a white blaze on it, I have to go hug and kiss that tree because I feel like I'm home. And that's the special bond with other thru hikers is it's like the trail belongs to everybody. It's a national trail.
Mm-hmm.
But those who have thru hiked it have just a special bond. And we're like protectors of that trail. And I mean, I meet people who have hiked the Appalachian Trail, and there's an instant bond of, oh, when did you hike? What was your trail name? And, conversations that will go on forever because we're just part of something very, very special that not a lot of people get to experience.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So that's why I wrote about it, because I wanted people, even armchair readers, armchair adventurers, to be able to read that and understand what it's like to be out on the trail. Mm-hmm. So I wrote it as if the reader's right next to me the whole time. And I'm talking to them like they're right next to me.
That's cool. That's a really neat perspective for the book.
Yeah.
And what's the title of the book again?
The title is called Trail Gimp. The subtitle is Self-Discovery and Empowerment on the Appalachian Trail.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. It was lovely to hear, and I'm glad that I was able to hold the space for you to share this with the world.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, I'm glad you made it through safely and really got to have that life-changing experience. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It really was special. So I appreciate you having me on, and letting me talk about this. I don't think my husband wants to hear any more about the Appalachian Trail. My family's tired of hearing about it. I could talk about it to anybody forever. And this was just one story. I mean, I was out there for 6 months, so there's so many stories.
I can only imagine.
So thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, of course. It was definitely a pleasure. That's all for today's episode. If you're ready to go deeper into this work, head to divineascensionco.com to explore my programs or book a session. And if this episode helped you see something new, the best thank you is sharing it with someone else on this path. And if you've been feeling called to experience something truly transformative, I'd love for you to join me on a sacred pilgrimage to Egypt in September 2026. Spots are limited. Visit divineascensionco.com/Egypt for all the details or reach out if you have any questions. I'll see you next time.